And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. I am Alexi Boyd from Boyd Office Management Services, proud supporters of Triple H, and I'm here with a fantastic special guest, which I've been super excited about having on the show for the last few weeks, actually, ever since we... I just dropped my mic. Ever since we had our cup of coffee in Chatswood, which was awesome. I'm here with Amanda Choi, and she's going to talk to us all about sustainability and not just sustainability in terms of the environment, which for us, or for me who hasn't been introduced to the concept before, I realised that was what I thought of when I thought of sustainability with business. But actually more about sustainability and long-term growth and looking at different patterns in your business, and you are the expert in that. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Alexi. It's wonderful to be here.
It's a grey old day, but I think we're going to brighten everyone's day with some serious business knowledge. Now, today we're talking about sustainability, as I mentioned before. But before that, you came from a corporate background, as many small business owners do. What brought you to this line of work? Where did the passion come from? What was your background that led you to this?
Alexi, I think, like a lot of people who have had a long career in the corporate world, I had a little bit of an awakening after many years of being on that merry-go-round, and I wanted to leave and really make a difference. Not that I wasn't making a difference in the corporate world, but I felt that there was an opportunity for me to go out and really be a change leader. So I left after 15 years. God,
that's long term in corporate, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's long term.
So I worked for one of Australia's biggest telcos, and my team was business transformation and change management. And when I left, I did a bit of soul searching and realised that what I was really passionate about was making a better future for our kids, the legacy that we're leaving for our children at the moment is really not looking very positive. And thinking about what difference I could make, at first I really looked at my own behaviour, and the term sustainability is a bit of a funny one for me because it's a bit loaded. But essentially I was looking at how sustainable was my lifestyle, was my diet, my consumer habits, all of those things that I could do personally. But then with my business lens on, I realised that I could bring the experience that I had in making change in an organisation to other organisations, to help them really to become future-proof, and along the way to make a difference to the planet, to the environment and to society, which is really the three components of sustainability if you add financial and economic sustainability in a business as well.
And I have to say that you're doing it in a really great environment, because I think that the place that we're at in the world at the moment, there's a desire for change, there's a desire to make a difference. And we've talked about this before on the show about drilling it down to really what is your impact and what is your business's impact, and how can you change your habits, like you said, and change the way that you grow and develop, and your long-term thinking to think about sustainability as well. It's interesting that you come from a change management perspective, because I suppose, you know, I haven't spent a great deal of time in corporate, but to me change management means you just take the policies that the board are giving you and you implement them across the board through education. That's pretty much my understanding of change management. But obviously it's more nuanced than that. It's more intricate, and you can really make a difference in a massive organisation like we used to work. It's interesting that you've taken that and you've condensed it down for how small businesses can do that for themselves. And I think we're very lucky to have you on the Upper North Shore in small business. Because I know that you do a lot of great work with the Chamber of Commerce in Chatswood.
Yes.
And also with the Building Business Partnership, which is a fantastic group. Did I say building or better?
Better Business Partnership.
Better Business Partnership. And they obviously work with councils, especially in the Lower North Shore. We'd love to get them up here. Mayor Steve Russell, if you're listening, we would love to be a partner with that up here in Hornsby. But it's great to see that those things are happening at a at an enterprise level as well, not just at a government level. I really appreciate it when people like you step forward and bring all that knowledge to small businesses. So let's have a quick chat about what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to have a look at strategies and tips for small business to look at sustainability, to look at long-term sustainability and, of course, our environmental impact. We're going to talk a bit more about the BBP program, which is awesome, and how it works with businesses and local government. And the Australian government certification process, what's the point of that? I think I'd probably say that most businesses have dipped into looking into certification of some kind, and you're going to explain a little bit more about that, which is great. And why, of course, looking into the future, we can't obviously ignore sustainability. I think the people who are the ignoramuses in the world are hopefully becoming fewer and fewer in between. So take me through some strategies, we're all about practical here on Small Biz. Take me some practical strategies that people can really implement almost on a daily level in their business.
Sure, okay. Well, I thought I'd start with some really sobering stats. And I was just driving up the Pacific Highway and it was absolutely congested at 8 o'clock in the morning, as you can imagine. And thinking about population growth, and lo and behold, on Radio 702, there was actually a great debate about sustainability and the impact that we just have too many people. So if you think about, in 1950, there were 2.5 billion people on the planet. That's a pretty big number. By 2010, it had risen to 6.8 billion. By 2016, we're at 7.4 billion today.
It's growing so fast. It's so exponential.
We're looking at 9 billion by 2040. So in terms of how much the actual planet can sustain, that's a real challenge. So that's one sobering fact. The other one is that, as we can feel, the Earth is hotting up. 2016 has been the hottest year ever on record, and it's no sign of abating. So, we've got some really massive challenges in terms of feeding ourselves, in terms of managing all the catastrophic weather risks that are going to happen. So it means that businesses need to look into the future and actually assess those risks today. And global companies, big companies, are actually leading the charge, and they're doing a lot in corporate social responsibility, which is having policies and strategies around making sure that what they do is measured and conscious of the environmental impact that they have, and also looking at how they can improve the lives of others, both their employees and their customers, first and foremost, but also suppliers, communities up and downstream that they touch, as well as maybe social, humanitarian benefits.
It goes to the psychology of it, actually, because when you think about it, we're told constantly by the government that, small business is the engine room of the economy, that we as entities are, hiring more people than ever before, that we are purchasing more than ever before. We need to think about those things as though we were a corporate. If they can be socially responsible, why haven't I don't know of any small businesses that have really got a policy or a strategy and they make it part of their business plan. We're constantly learning about business plans. How about those people who are teaching us, those executive coaches, start to push into those business plans a section about sustainability? Because we need to be as conscious as anybody else, because we are supposedly the engine room of the Australian economy and the biggest employer.
The biggest employer in Australia, that's right. And I've grappled with that myself. I think that at the core of it, small business owners are sustainable in the sense that they are efficient and economic with their resources. You're running your business on the smell of an oily rag. I'm setting myself up as well, and I'm finding it's, you really do need to be financially sustainable.
But cheap is not often environmentally sustainable. I mean, you go, how many of us have gone to the $2 shop to buy, our stationery, for example? That could possibly be the worst possible place to purchase anything in terms of sustainable of resources, and also the people who manufacture those things. It's not great. So there are decisions that can be made.
There are decisions that can be made, and it is the right time at the beginning or when you're still small with an intent to grow, to think about these policies and put them in place, put them in writing, so that as your employees come on board, they know what you're about. They know what your policies are, that you are really conscious of your environmental footprint.
Lead by example.
Absolutely.
It's funny you should say that, because last night I did that presentation for Small Biz about HR and hiring your first employee, and I did not even mention once the environment. So shame on me. I should have included, when people are talking about staff manuals and developing policies and procedures around employing people, that they actually state that we have an environmental policy in this company, and when you're making purchases on behalf of the company, that you have to adhere to that.
It's interesting. I think I have a theory that pretty much everybody is a bit of an environmental warrior at home on the weekend, and they do have those values within them, but at work, for some reason, it doesn't become explicit.
It's because their work, we're trying to coach everyone and teach everyone to think of their business as separate from themselves for psychological reasons. So when you're making a purchase for something else, you don't think you're making a purchase on behalf of you.
Maybe that's it. But by articulating as a business owner the practice or the policy that is imbued in the business itself, your employees and contractors and partners, they will all see that and pick up on it and follow it.
Lead by example, absolutely. So let's talk about some specific strategies. What are some really simple things that people can just, if they're making decisions like that today, what can they implement?
Okay, well, the three main areas that I would look at as a small business owner are energy, waste and water. Some of those may be more relevant depending on what sort of industry you have. So the maxim that what gets measured gets done is absolutely critical here. So if you don't know how much energy you're using, if you don't know how much water you're using, or you don't know how much waste you're producing, then you're never going to be able to baseline and actually set some improvements.
Set some targets.
So the first thing to do is really just do a bit of an audit to understand, how much your energy bill is. And if you don't have smart metering, at least sort of get a sense of, what sort of lights you're using, how much your refrigerators, I'm making some assumptions on the sort of businesses that you have, but every single business will be using power, whether it's for computers, for lights, even your car usage, looking at your fuel usage and your employees. Do you have a sustainable transport policy at work? So rather than paying for car parking or having a car allowance, trying to encourage people to take public transport, maybe bike or walk to work. Maybe
like once every couple of weeks you say, right, today everybody's going to make an effort to get to work by public transport once every couple of weeks.
Yeah, and being sympathetic, if things happen, and you're really encouraging people to be more active, to emit less greenhouse gases in their journeys. And getting back to the energy, there are lots of tools on the web that are free. If you have an analytical mind, it's about just plugging in some basic inputs, getting an understanding and converting it to, whether it's a greenhouse gas emission or more tangibly dollars and cents.
Exactly.
And looking, for competitive other suppliers.
And make sure you include green energy when you're making the purchase decisions. Absolutely.
Exactly.
That's not a difficult thing to switch on. It's interesting what you were saying about using smart meters, because I know that Hornsby Library has a bunch of them that are available for people to use for home and business, where you can plug them in and find out which of your processes are using up the most energy. And I read a statistic when I was looking into an environmental show a few weeks ago that those standby lights, that's 10 to 15% of your energy, the standby lights on your TV, on your microwave, on everything. And it does add up. And if you go, what am I paying for a bill? Typically in a household, it could be up to $3,000 a year. That's $350. And that's not insignificant with looking at trying to get into the habit of turning off those machines and not just letting your computer go to sleep, but actually shutting it down at the end of the day and turning off the screen and turning off the printer. So I think there are things that we can do on a daily basis for small business to be a little bit more conscious of these things. And we are the biggest employer, we are the biggest group of businesses in Australia. If every single one of us made a difference, we'd probably have a pretty major impact on the power usage in Australia. Look, we're going to take a quick break here on Triple H 100.1 FM. We'll be back after these short announcements. I'm here with Amanda Choi. You're listening to Small Biz Matters. So just before the break, Amanda, we were talking a little bit about sustainability and small business and just some practical strategies that people can do to implement on a daily basis. We talked about having a look at how much you actually use in terms of power, what appliances use up the most power and how you can change your daily habits. What about procurement? Take me through a couple of steps with making purchasing decisions, for example.
I think we all just, as you mentioned, go to the cheapest option as the default. For a sustainable procurement policy, you really need to think where are these materials coming from and what are the environmental and social impacts of those? And a lot of people might say, who cares? I actually don't care. I just want the cheapest cost. As a small business, at some point or another, you're probably going to be tendering for working for a government or a big organisation. You might be even supplying an Aldi or a Woolworths or Coles. And more often, these big organisations are demanding of their suppliers and partners that they have sustainable procurement practices. So they will require from you a certification in your tender. Well, how are you making sure that in your procurement, in the use of the supplies in your business that I'm going to be buying from you, I want to make sure that my supply chain is clean.
Right.
That, let's say, in terms of environmental impact, that there are environmental management standards that are being implemented and followed by all my suppliers down the line. In relation to products, that they haven't contravened any regulations. If you think about clothing and all of the dramas, the horrible stories of child labour and the poor working conditions in developing countries, there's a lot more pressure on small business people and medium businesses to ensure that they are conscious, that they're asking the questions and working with suppliers to make sure that they do have sustainable sort of a see-through all the way down to the end, to the raw resources. And
what exactly do big companies, when you're trying to get that tender, what are they looking for? Are they looking for policies and procedures that simply have it down on paper? How are they going to monitor the real practices to know that you're being sustainable all the way down your chain? How do they see that?
Of course, it depends on the size of the contract and also the size of the partnership. So if let's say Walmart was a good example in the States, and I think it's a salient warning for Australia. They are the biggest employer in the United States, and they demanded of their suppliers that they reduce their packaging, that they reduce their environmental impact, that they measure it, that they all had environmental processes. They also actually banned a couple of chemicals in their entire product range. So by doing that, they really changed a whole lot of their suppliers' practices, manufacturing and resourcing processes. So in Australia, let's say Aldi, in America, Aldi have come out and said that they will only be buying organic and non-GMO products for their supermarkets.
That's huge.
So I've seen this on social media a few times, and people have assumed that Aldi Australia is doing the same thing. Aldi Australia has not made that statement yet, but I don't think it won't be too long before consumers in Australia will say to Aldi, how come you're selling these products? They're not organic, or they're not, as I've seen in the media. So for Australian suppliers and for businesses who are working with companies like that, they will be put on notice, and obviously given some time. You know, you can't just say, okay, today we're changing the rules and they're going to be applicable from tomorrow. But more and more big companies are putting their partners on notice and putting on their websites, these are our policies. What we require of you is that you have policies. We may audit them. And in these days of internet, social media, you know, everything's transparent.
Everything's accessible. You can't hide.
Make bogus claims. You know, I'm not sure whether you've heard of the term greenwashing, but it's a pretty cool jargonistic term, meaning when a company makes a claim about being environmentally responsible, but then you find actually that it's just total garbage and they're just making it as a marketing claim. They're actually not backing it up. So similarly, if you have an environmental statement or policy and you're not following it, you know, maybe you might even get a whistleblower who says, hold on, I'm working for a company who's saying one thing on the outside but actually completely flouting it on the inside. I'm going to, you know, go public. I'm going to let people know, and voila, a greenwash claim.
And it's interesting what you were saying about the trickle-down effect, because you may not necessarily be directly involved with a large supplier like a large corporate or a government organisation, but perhaps you have clients who have got those direct relationships, and if they are similarly audited, then the trickle-down effect is that you could also be to have a look at the products that you use, your sustainability, the way that you access your procurement decisions. And I think what we've covered a little bit in the last few minutes is the fact that it's not just about your energy use and the similarly obvious things that we talk about when we talk about environmental sustainability, but also when you're making purchase decisions, where has that product come from? How has it been manufactured? How has it impacted on people and communities at the other end? Because if your supplier's supplier supplies Aldi or Coles or Woolworths or any of the other big corporations, then you could lose that contract. Because it will be found out. Like you said, we're all fairly transparent. We need to be transparent. And if you're not willing to be audited and to have those things looked at, you might not get those contracts. It brings me around a little bit to the BBP program. And I think what the Better Business Partnership, which, again, I hope that Hornsby and Ku-ring-gai can both become part of when the merge happens.
Ku-ring-gai's already part of the program.
It is, I should say, yeah. We should specify that the Ku-ring-gai Council have joined on board. So tell me a little bit about the partnership, how it works and how it works with businesses and government.
So the Better Business Partnership program is a program that is co-funded by North Sydney, Ku-ring-gai and Willoughby councils at the moment, with some other councils looking to join as well. It's a program that promotes business success through sustainability strategies. So the team, if you are a business within those program areas and within those council boundaries, then the team will come out and conduct a free assessment, review your business practices at the moment, particularly in relation to energy use, waste, water, sustainable procurement, transport, and also your community and staff involvement and support. And they will do a bit of an audit and review how you're going. They'll give you a report back. So it's, in a sense, doing that baselining for you. And you will get a measure of how you're going. They've also got a whole lot of resources and tips and strategies to help you to improve. They have programs for particularly around energy, waste and water, where they can help you get grants or to get discounts to actually make things more efficient and economic for you to become more sustainable in those ways. And the other thing that they have is an amazing community of Better Business Partnership aligned businesses that they cross-refer to, that they also recognise in their annual Better Business Awards, which I think they're coming up early next year. So when you become a Better Business Partnership a certified business, you're automatically submitted into those awards, and there are different categories, and it's a fantastic award ceremony that's held in the Lower North Shore area, and you're celebrated and recognised amongst your peers.
And I like the way that they have. It's kind of a networking group with purpose, isn't it? You don't necessarily have to be a member. You don't have these huge membership fees, but you do get that innate organic opportunity to network and meet other people who have got similar mindedness when it comes to sustainability. And you know that the people that you're using are going to tick the same boxes and have the same values that you do because they've been through that process. And just remind me again, it is a free sustainability
Totally free.
Audit. It's fantastic. And it doesn't just look at, your wastewater management. It looks at your procurement process and how you implement those policies and procedures throughout your organisation. So if you're going through one of those phases where you're going through some business growth, you're looking at starting to do a business plan, you're looking at 5 years into the future, this is the perfect opportunity really to start implementing those strategies.
It's a great program. I think go online, www.betterbusinesspartnership.com.au, check it out. Get a consultation. Get someone to come out and have a look at your business. Once you get certified, you get a sticker also on the website that advertises that you are a better business, and that people will talk about millennials and how much of a millennial magnet that sort of certification can actually be, because it really puts your credentials out there as a business that is not just about making profits. It's also about being better for the planet and being better for society.
And the fact that the certification process is actually done through a government organisation rather than something private, it's very obvious that you can't necessarily buy in to that certification, that once you've implemented those strategies, you've got that certification. And just remind me again what that phrase was, millennial magnet. I love that expression, millennial magnet, because of course, let's face it, those guys are just a little bit ahead of the curve from us when it comes to thinking about broadly about the planet in their everyday use, and maybe that's the sort of company they want to work for. I mean, yesterday we were talking about hiring your first employee, and it's not just about, getting the best person. You had to advertise your business to them. If you're trying to, collect the best employees, well, you're being advertised here. You're on the shelf. You've got to show that you've got all those credentials that interest them, and they're going to want to work for a company like that because they do have that, the best employee is the best employee for anyone, and they can pick and choose where they work for. So I think it's a really important accreditation. So once again, that is betterbusinesspartnership.com.au. That's right.
That's right. One word.
So check it out because there's a lot of really, really great tips on there as well. So we mentioned before about certification and working with government agencies and corporates as well. When it comes to the Australian government certification, how does that work, and what are the benefits to being part of that process?
There isn't a single certification offered by the government.
Why?
That is one of the problems with sustainability, I think. It's one of those terms, it's so vague. There are environmental building certifications, so you've got green building certifications. There's also a program called GECA, it stands for Good Environmental Choice Australia, and that is Australia's environmental product certification.
Right.
But in terms of businesses, there's a standard that people would be familiar, the ISO 14001.
Oh, that's the ticky thing.
Yeah, which is really very much a business process around environmental management. So, if you think also work health and safety and all of those sort of occupational, but also environmental impacts of your business operations, that's one certification that if you're tendering for a government contract, one of the things that they will ask for is, are you ISO certified? Do you have an EMS in place? In terms of certification along the lines of the certification that Better Business Partnership offers, there is no one recognised one by either the federal or state government. So it's sort of a bit out there, and that's why it's easy for the companies in the past to greenwash, because, you can make all these claims about being environmentally friendly or green, but really not have any independent tick of the box. There is one that I'd like to raise people's awareness to, which is actually a global certification. It's B Corp, and it's short for B Corporation. And what B stands for is benefit. And it came out of the US, and it's, again, started by the millennials and really appeals to that younger generation. It's where business is being used as a force for good in the world. And businesses compete in the B Corp world to be the best for the world, not just the best in the world. And so they certify on environment, employees, customers, the community, as well as a company's governance or transparency, how much rigour they have around how a company is actually run and measured. So that is a certification that is independently assessed in America. If you go online to the B Corporation website, there's a self-assessment form that companies can take, and to be certified, you need to achieve a minimum of 80 points out of 200 in those categories. And once you get to that point, then there is an independent audit, and they will ask you about what policies do you have in place, how is your environmental or social purpose expressed, and how do you make that tangible through your product or your service, the way you run your business, the way you buy your supplies, etc. So that's one certification.
Is it recognised? I mean, if you go for government tender, are they going to look at the B Corp process and say, okay, well, that ticks some boxes? Or do you think it's still gaining momentum?
It's an independent certification by a global body that has been audited. It's tested every 2 years, so you have certification renewed every 2 years, and that means that you need to go through that process again.
And that is meaningful with the big corporates if you're going to go for that supply chain.
Yeah, it's very popular with the smaller companies because it's quite a thorough process. The big companies that I can think of are like Etsy, Patagonia. So it's very much a US based movement to begin with. But watch this space. I think that over the next 5 years, it will really take off globally.
That's fantastic. Well, everyone should just keep an eye on that, really, B Corp, and particularly because we live in such a global economy, if you do have clients who are US based or have that connection to the US, then I imagine it's probably a lot more well known over there, and therefore it has a lot more weighting when you're going for those sort of tenders. Look, you're listening to Small Biz Matters. We're going to take a short break and listen to some community service announcements, and we'll be back after this with Triple H 100.1 FM. So we are talking today about sustainability and the importance of thinking long-term about your business, not just from a purely environmental point of view, but actually from a getting clients point of view. There's a lot of, as you mentioned, bigger corporations, government agencies who will literally not engage with you as a supplier unless you can prove through your practices and even to the point of through, how you procure your own products, that you have sustainable business practice. And one group that we touched on a little bit earlier is, of course, I'm going to say the dreaded because anybody over the age of 40 who runs a business rolls their eyes whenever we say the millennials. Now, why do we have to think about this group? I'm sitting here as a business and I go, I don't have any clients that are under 25. Why do I possibly have to consider these people, these very inconvenient millennials, when I've got business practice? Why is it that I have to kowtow to their needs and their wants when it comes to the environmental sustainability? Why is it important?
The much maligned millennials. Oh, well, they are the biggest generation ever in history, and the makeup of the workforce today, 34% of the workforce are millennials.
Wow.
And although we sort of think of them mainly as in their 20s, the oldest millennials today are 35 and they have kids of their own. So, you know, they're in managerial senior positions in many companies. They make up, there's about 5 million in Australia today, but 50% of the world's population today, if you look at all of the developing nations, so, you know, India is 50% millennial.
Wow.
So
it's a huge market.
It is a huge market. And I have been totally obsessed with what they think and what they're demanding of their employers and their brands, I suppose, who they buy from, because it really aligns with these beliefs around environmental and social responsibility. 9 out of 10 millennials that have been surveyed in 2016 said that they believe that any business must be measured on more than just financial success. And they don't believe that just chasing short-term profit is the marker of a company that they want to work for or buy from.
And that's interesting. We're talking earlier about the trickle-down effect of your supplier, your client's client may work for a big company. Well, we all need to be more transparent. We are all innately more transparent anyway because of our business practices and our online presence and being in the cloud. Therefore, we can all be we can all be investigated in terms of what those do we tick those boxes? And if the millennials are the largest group of consumers and soon will be, then they're making those business decisions based on not just money, but also, you know, how it's not just about how cheap a product is anymore. It's where does that product come from? How is it manufactured? And who does it impact along the way? So it's not just about your own business practices and the warm and fluffy feeling anymore. It's really about the end client and them knowing that the goods and services that they're buying have come from the right place and have been sustainably sourced, etc. And I suppose it's difficult because, I mean, the majority of people who I'm speaking to today, the majority of our listeners are home-based, they're small businesses, their business practices, they say, well, what I do doesn't really impact on the greater community. I'm not in the supermarket. I don't make a widget. I don't produce something that has packaging. So it's just me being a service. But at the end of the day, that can still be audited and that can still be looked at quite intensively. So everybody needs to change their business practices for the sake of the longevity of their business as well.
And if you think about if you are hiring employees, and one of the stereotypes of the millennials is that they just turn up, they want to run the business from day one. They think they've got, you know, a whole lot of experience when they don't, and then they leave. What's that all about? Well, the survey that Deloitte's ran this year globally, 1 in 4 millennials said, I intend to leave my current job within 12 months. And 2/3 had said that they want to leave by 2020. So if they're in a corporation, they don't have that sense of loyalty to organisations or employers that we might have felt when we started out.
Why? Why do you think that is? What is it that's changed so much in the workforce that means that us coming straight out of uni have a different attitude towards the next generation? Do you think it's because they have a short attention span?
No, look, there's 2 main reasons. There's one, they're better educated. They're definitely more connected with their peers and they read a lot more. They have higher expectations. And, you know, we've been talking about leadership and developing people in the workplace. And what they're finding is that they get to these workplaces and they're like, well, I do want to develop my leadership. I do want to develop my potential, but I'm not being recognised and I'm not being trained. I'm not being given the opportunities. So that's the number one reason why they're choosing to vote with their feet. But the second reason is related to our bigger topic today, which is what is my employer actually giving back to the planet? What role am I playing as an employee here in making the world a better place, either environmentally or socially? Am I reducing poverty? Am I, you know, is this a nice place to work? Like, is my employer actually treating me and my other teammates like real people? Are we actually being looked after? Or is there someone else out there that is offering a better employee strategy? So, for millennials, it's as much about the group, about employees as themselves, and about the bigger picture.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. So it's almost like when you're willing and you're thinking about starting to hire someone, and this is something that I was mentioning last night, you've got to have a vision for what that person might be, but also what that person's going to bring to the company. And I guess what I didn't touch on is that you almost need to hit the ground running as an employer with what you're going to give them. So we're all very scared about putting too much energy and resources and money into our employees because they're going to leave. Why would I train someone up? Why would I put them through a $1,000 course to make them a better employee for someone else? But that's their expectation, is that they're going to be given the opportunity to grow and develop and get trained, and almost it's a stepping stone. So I think maybe there needs to be a certain acceptance that is what that's what their expectation is of jobs now, and this is what we need to deliver, even just to hang on to them for just a little while. And we need to change our mindset that it's not about getting an employee that's going to stay there for 10 years. That doesn't happen anymore. It's about getting an employee, using them as a resource, helping them develop, which then in turn develops the role. It will develop that position within your company, so the next person steps into that higher level. And they're developing it. So one thing I would say from strategy point of view and policies and procedures and that back-end admin is, if you get that perfect candidate, don't neglect them. Don't help them develop and grow. But as they develop and grow, make them write everything down. What is it that they do on a daily basis? What is it that they implement? What have they changed about the role? Get them to write a job description, so that when the next person comes into that role, that role is another step higher. And then you've got an opportunity you've got two positions now. Where did they start and where have they finished that role? And now that's a great way to grow business. Use them as a resource to develop those positions. Don't just let them languish, because that's not what their expectation is. And you'll lose them. You'll train them up to just a basic understanding about your business, and you'll lose them.
One thing that anybody wants is that relationship as an employee, rather than just being considered a number or a widget. So, it can't be transactional, and by empowering and actually developing your people, you're going to get a lot more engagement, a lot more commitment. And in relation to allowing your employees to maybe take on projects that relate to environmental or social projects, it's going to allow that individual person's values to come out and flourish, and your business is going to benefit as well.
If they're more educated and they've got a higher expectation of what they can get out of the role, then open those lines of communications too. Ask them, what are you expecting to be able to grow? Where would you like to see this role go in 6 months' time? What can you bring to the table? So many times we try and get the candidate to fit what the role that we've created, and we're just trying to get a square peg in a round hole. Well, don't forget that those people are bringing with them a wealth of not only experience, but a bit more life experience that we had at that age, because they're more worldly and they have a better understanding of what goes on in the world around them. So it's an interesting HR discussion. And you know what? It doesn't get talked about in HR circles, does it? It's just about what's the CV, what's their experience, what's their qualifications, can I make them fit in the hole that I've just created and try and hang on to them for 2 years. So I think we all need to be a lot more flexible and have an understanding of what that generation's needs and wants are with regards to sustainability. It's a really interesting discussion, and nobody's talking about it. HR is the biggest headache for any small businesses. You ask anybody, why won't you hire employees? It's too hard. It's too much red tape. It's too difficult to find the right candidate, particularly people who work in the construction industry. Oh, they just come, they do the job, they go. But that's obviously because as a group, they're not being satisfied and their needs aren't being met. So I think it's a really, really interesting discussion. My God, you and I could talk about this for hours.
The big thing is to hire on fit, cultural fit, attitude, not necessarily experience in a CV. You can train that. but really being able to find the right drive, you know, the person who is a problem solver and who's so keen and wants to engage with people, you can train those people to do anything. And if you give them that empowerment and development, yeah, I think they'll stay.
And also don't try and hire a mini-me. Exactly. Don't try and hire a duplicate of yourself that's 20 years younger, because it's not going to work. A, you don't exist that way. But I think it's an interesting discussion. Look, thank you so much for coming on the program today, Amanda. It's been absolutely fascinating, jam-packed full of strategies and information and, long-term vision for our small business listeners. Now, if you'd like to listen to the podcast, it will be available on the smallbizmatters.com.au website within the next few days, where you can find all of our blogs and podcasts, as well as our articles that we've written for the Fantastic Monthly Chronicle as well. Look, thank you once again for coming on the show. I'd love you to come back on the show in another couple of months' time, and we can talk more about sustainability and all those things that you are the expert in. And if you out there are an expert and have some knowledge to impart to small businesses, please get in touch, and you're welcome to come on the program as well. You've been listening to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program that you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi, and I will see you all next week at 9 a.m. This is Small Biz Matters on Triple H 100.1 FM.